Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about finding x and y values with all the different forms of a function that we have looked at. So let's get started. Here, if we're trying to find x and y values from a table, it's as simple as um, reading the values from the table. So right here where it says what is the value of y when x equals 8, we just find 8 in the column where x is, and we look straight across from it, and the value of when x equals 8, y equals 1. Not sure why I have that typo there, but that should say x equals 8. What is the value of y when x equals 2? Again, we're going to find 2 in the x column and look straight across from it. So when x equals 2, y equals 5. What is the value of y when x equals 4? You're going to find 4 in your x column, look straight across from it, and y equals negative 1. Now we can go backwards from that also. So what is the value of x when y equals 5? Well, when y equals 5, you find it 5 in the y column and look over to the x column straight across from it, and you'll see that when y equals 5, x equals 2. And what is the value of x when y equals negative 1? Find negative 1 in the y column and look straight across from it, and you see that x equals 4. And then what is the value of x when y equals 1? Well, if you look for 1 in the y column, you see that it occurs 3 times. So we need to list all 3 of those values that go with y equals 1. So when y equals 1, x equals 0, 8, or 10. Now, let's look at a mapping. And again, remember on a mapping, you go from your domain to your range, and the arrow points to the value that corresponds with an element from your domain. So what is the value of y when x equals 2? You look in your domain circle and you find 2, and you follow the arrow, and you see that when x equals 2, y equals 11. And then what is the value of y when x equals negative 1? You find a negative 1 in your domain column, and you look across, follow the arrow, and you see that y equals 5. And what is the value of y when x equals 0? You find 0 in your domain column, follow the arrow, and you see that when x equals 0, y equals 3. And we can also do that backwards. You just have to follow the arrow backwards. So what is the value of x when y equals 5? You find 5 in your range column, and you look backwards across the arrow, and you see that when y equals 5, x equals 1 or negative 1, because 5 has 2 arrows pointing to it. And what is the value of x when y equals 11? Well, when y equals 11, if you go backwards on the arrow, you see that x equals 2. And what is the value of x when y equals 3? And if you find 3 in your range column and you look backwards, you will see that x equals 0 when y equals 3. All right, let's look at a graph. Okay, what is the value of y when x equals 2? So we're going to find 2 on the x-axis, and we're going to go up to our line, and then we're going to go over to the y-axis, and we can see that when x equals 2, y equals 3. All right, what is the value of y when x equals 0? Well, first of all, we have to consider where x equals 0, and x equals 0 at the origin. And then we're going to go straight up our y-axis to the line, and we see that when x equals 0, y equals 1. All right, what is the value of y when x equals negative 1? So we're going to find negative 1, and if you notice, negative 1 is right there on the x-axis, and on the x-axis, the values of y are 0. So when x equals negative 1, y equals 0. All right, we can also work this backwards. So what is the value of x when y equals 4? We're going to find 4 on the y-axis. We're going to go across to the line and then down to the x-axis. And we see that when y equals 4, x equals 3 there. And what is the value of x when y equals negative 2? Okay, so we locate negative 2 on the y-axis. We're going to go across to the line and up to the x-axis. And we see that when y equals negative 2, x equals negative 3. And what is the value of x when y equals 0? Well, we're thinking about where does y equal 0? And again, that's at the origin. That's where we need to start. And we're going to go then across to the line that where it crosses the x-axis. And when we look there, we see that when y equals 0, x equals -1. All right, let's look at our last thing, and it is from a table. So here I have, from an equation, we're going to complete a table for an equation. So when I have an equation and I want to complete this table, I have complete the table for y equals x plus 5. Very simple linear equation here. And you see some of the values there are filled in. So we're going to start where when x equals -2. Well, if x equals -2, then that means y equals -2 plus 5. And -2 plus 5 is 3. So 3 goes in our y column. Then when x equals 0, y equals 0 plus 5, and 0 plus 5 is 5, so 5 goes in our y column. And when x equals 4, y equals 4 plus 5, and 9 goes in our y column. Now we're going to start working backwards because now we have the y. So we know that 7 equals x plus 5. And we have to ask ourselves, what would we add to 5 to get x? Well, the obvious answer would be 2 there. And then when we plug the last one in, we get -12 equals x plus 5. And you can either think about what I would have to add 5 to end up with -12. You can subtract both sides from that. Either way, -12 minus 5 would give you -17. All right. This last method is probably the most involved. So we're going to do some practice for all of these, giving some special attention to this equations, because we know from experience that that is a weaker problem for us. So good luck and happy hunting for X and Y.